विसारी जुगल चरण सोल चिन्ह जेह नजर समीप रहो हमारी श्री हरि कृष्ण महाराज की जय, घनश्याम महाराज की जय। To recap last week's lecture, we talked about goals and resolutions for the upcoming year of 2013. We mentioned that the time that has gone is not in our hands anymore, but the time which is coming is in our hands. From this time, we can make our own goals, resolutions, and even our own destiny, we can say. We talked about goals and resolutions. Now, just to recap, goals are something that one wants to achieve. It can be a short-term goal, it can be a long-term goal, and resolutions are some kind of change one wants in one's life. So we talked about both of these topics. Also, we mentioned that making goals is the best way to progress in life. Meaning, if you aim high, you might get there, you might not, but at least you'll make some kind of progress. That's the main point, to make progress in life. But as devotees, our true goal should be to attain God. This is what we talked about last week. To attain God should be our ultimate goal. Meaning, in life, we might have small resolutions, such as getting good grades, or graduating from college, or attaining a bachelor's or master's degree. But on a bigger scale, on a scale which is not on this worldly planet, we can say is to attain God. That's our ultimate goal. Now, we also talked about that phrase, to attain God. What does that exactly mean? And I mentioned to you that the exact definition that I am perceiving to you is to have a constant connection with God. This means to attain God. If we think about it, we already have achieved God. We have His darshan. We have everything to do with Him, but yet our mind still roams in the world. Our mind still roams in the worldly desires of the world. And due to this, we cannot say that we have constant connection with the Lord Almighty. Due to this, we have to make this goal. The goal to attain God. But in order to reach our goal, we need some kind of guide. Just think about it. Suppose you had a treasure map in your hands, and it showed you how to get to the treasure, but there's so many obstacles in the way, and there's so many ways that you don't know how to get to. Even if the map shows you, it's still very difficult, and one may get lost. But if one had a guide that has seen the treasure, if one had a person that can lead you on the path, a person who has experienced, then one can easily reach that treasure and attain glory. Also, we can talk about an airplane pilot. An airplane pilot takes a person from point A to point B, no matter where their destination is in the world. But without a pilot, without a person who has a master in aeronautical engineering, in aeronautics, how can that person take one or even fly a plane? That's why it's very important to have a guide in one's life. That's why it's very essential to have someone to follow. And due to this, one is able to achieve whatever they want. Now we're talking about the fashion of attaining God. So obviously, one will need a true God-realized, self-realized saint. The word I'm going to use for such a saint is Satpurush. The exact meaning of a Satpurush is a sadhu who has constant rapport with God and who is self-realized and God-realized. So whenever I talk about or I say the word Satpurush, I'm talking about such a saint who is experienced in a field where he has attained God, where he has constant rapport with God. So, such a saint, we will talk about his description, his glory, his importance, and his essential. Why do we need him? All these topics we're going to go over today in order so we can understand and we can make our goal very easy in life. Now, how can we achieve something that we don't even know about? Just think about it. Climbing a mountain, making a new item, all these things. Someone has to show you something in order for it to get done. There are very few people who have achieved something without any kind of guide. This goes for any concept if you think about it. But one needs a guide in everything, or some kind of teacher, you can say. A teacher, guide, professor, all these words I'm using have to go with the same meaning and concept. And that's where the Ekantik Satpurush comes into play in the spiritual world. We describe Satpurush, but Ekantik, that word is very special, and that word can only belong to such a person who has realized God, but who firmly has the four essentials to, you can say, the Swaminarayan sect, which is Dharma, Bhakti, Gnan, and Vairagya. Such a person who has firmly established these four qualities can be called Ekantik. And such a Satpurush that we mentioned earlier, such a person can take us and can help us reach our destination. But I want to talk about some steps. I call them the steps to success. So suppose you have met a great saint, a Satpurush. What do you need to do in order to attain God? You can't just stand in front of him and just keep looking at him. There has to be something more. Well, there's three things that I researched from the Vachanamrut and Swaminarayan, and I found that if one follows these three steps, then one will achieve success. Number one must develop affection for the great saint, just like how one has affection for one's relatives. Meaning, it doesn't need to be more. You don't have to forget your mother, father. You don't have to forget your brother, sister, or your grandparents. It doesn't mean that. It means that however much affection you have for your parents, you must develop the same or more affection for the great saint. That's the first step. Now the second step is to have trust in his words. Obviously, after developing affection for anyone you can say, developing trust in his word is very important as well, and that needs to be done. And number three is, after developing trust, one must follow whatever he says, meaning whatever it is, through the mind, through the body, actions, anything, whatever type, whatever, any kind of things he tells us, we must follow. So I want to give three examples from Vachanamrut and Swaminarayan of these 3 steps to success. So number 1, to develop affection for the great saint. Now in Vachanamrit, Shashtriji Maharaj says in Varta 11th chapter that intense affection for the Satpurush is the only means to realizing one's Atma. It is the only means to realizing the greatness of the Satpurush, and it is also the only means to having direct realization of God. Look at how much weight these words have. Just by affection, Shashtriji Maharaj says, just by affection, one can realize the greatness of one's Atma, meaning one can realize that one is not this body and one is the soul. But even more than that, our ultimate goal, one can realize God. So the step that we're missing is that we just have to develop affection for the true saint. And this is very clear because it's said and spoken by Shashtriji Maharaj himself in the Vachanamrit at Varta. Our second step, to have trust in his words. Obviously, it's very easy after developing affection for anyone. Developing trust in his words is also not too difficult, but it is necessary. That's why it's one of our steps to success. So again in the Vachanamrit, Saranpur 18th chapter, these are the exact words of Shashtriji Maharaj I want to read to you. If a person who possesses faith encounters the company of a true saint and develops faith in his words, then all redemptive virtues will develop in his heart and vicious natures will be burnt away. Look at how much power it is to developing trust in the words of the great saint. Just by that, one can develop all redemptive virtues, and all of one's vicious natures would be burnt away. Meaning, for millions and millions of lives, we've been roaming around from body to body in this world and only engaging in the worldly desires. Due to this, we have natures like lust, anger, greed. All these bad natures we have developed, and it is stored in our soul. But if in this lifetime we achieve the association of such a great saint, then from that, and after we develop trust in his words, from that millions and millions of storage of these vicious natures are all burnt away just by putting trust in his words. Such a feat is very great, and such a feat can only be done if one has the blessings of God. And third, in the Vachanamrit, Kandari 1st chapter 78th Vachanamrit, for the third topic, to do exactly as the true saint says. Shashtriji Maharaj says that to do exactly as the true saint says without harboring any doubts is the only cause of the soul's liberation. Meaning the only cause. That word only is very important. Shashtriji Maharaj didn't say that this is one of the causes. He said the only cause. Meaning, from these 3 points, what I'm trying to give you or tell you is that if one wants to attain God, the only way is to join oneself and associate with the true Ekantik Satpurush. And from this, I want to tell you a story about Satyakam. Such a story which is historic, and it shows us whatever we need to know about this topic. It'll show us in this story. So I want to read you it exactly word to word in order for you to pick up each line. Satyakam was the son of Jabu. Satyakam long had a wish to study, so he decided to leave his home and search for a guru, meaning a spiritual master. He made his way to the ashram of Gautam, a sage, and asked to be his pupil, meaning his disciple. Gautam asked him about his family, to the surprise of Satyakam. Satyakam didn't know much about his family, with the exception of his mother, so he decided not to leave and returned home to ask his mother about his family history. His mother, Jabo, told him to tell the guru his name and his mother's name, simply what he knew already. He returned to his guru and told him all he knew, and the guru was quite pleased. Gautam then explained to Satyakam that before he could teach him, Satyakam would need to herd 400 weak cows from the ashram, and that he would not come back until there were 1,000 cows. Satyakam left with the cows without saying a single word, but looked after the cows with love and care. It took him several years to raise them to reach 1,000, but he did so ensuring that every single cow was quite healthy. He returned to his guru, and upon returning, he saw that the guru and deities were all quite pleased, as this extraordinary level of dedication to his guru. He was then blessed with boundless knowledge and reached a state of enlightenment. He was so much enlightened that the Gautam, the sage, could see such light emanating from Satyakam's face. He accepted him as his disciple and blessed him with Brahmvidya. Today Satyakam is a symbol of dedication, devotion, love, and service towards his guru. Such a story in history can really show one why one needs a spiritual master, why one needs to join oneself with such a person. If you think about it and look at the story, reflect back on it, Satyakam didn't do 1,000 danvats or said the name of God thousands and thousands of times or read many holy scriptures, but all he did was he just listened to the words of his guru. He followed the words of his guru, and due to this he reached such a high level of spirituality that light emanated from him. He reached a state of that is called Brahmvidya, the highest state. So such knowledge was attained by just following the words of his guru. He didn't do any kind of spiritual endeavors. This doesn't mean that we don't have to do spiritual endeavors in order to attain God and to please the great saint. But it also doesn't mean that we don't have to listen to his words and follow exactly what he says. Just think about it. If you're in medical school and if you are in a class and the professor is teaching, obviously you're going to listen to each and every word of his. You'll even record his words, and you'll think about him and you'll listen to him over and over in order for the exam or some kind of project you have. Why do you listen to him? You know that that's the only way that you'll benefit. In the same way, one should know that one will only benefit by following the words of such a saint. Now, I want to read you also another verse, you can say, from Gunatitan Swami's Vato. Gunatitan Swami was such a great saint in the time of Shree Maharaj, and he didn't write, but he preached to many devotees, and there was a collection made, and it's called Swaminarayan. From that, I want to read you a talk that Swami said at one time about 200 years ago. Swami said that one should attach one's jiv, meaning soul, to a sadhu who is attached to God, obeys God's commands, and knows God's wishes. From such a sadhu, one can acquire all the virtues of dharma, spiritual knowledge, detachment, devotion, and upasana, along with the knowledge of God's glory. Apart from him, where else can they be acquired? A person acquires the virtues of the sadhu who he serves, even if he is genuine spiritual aspirant. If he is not attached to a God-realized sadhu, he may regress, and even an evil person may progress if he associates with a genuine sadhu. Thus, the cause of everything is the company of a great saint. At the end, the most important line that Swami says, the cause of everything is the association of such a great saint. Meaning, Gunathan Swami was also God realized. He is also called the Sadguru or Satpurush. Such a saint who has experienced such enlightenment, he is saying that the only cause is the association of such a true saint. Now, obviously, you need to know a couple things in order for one to really, let's say, develop a fire or develop some kind of desire in one's heart to dedicate oneself to the true saint. So, first of all, we're going to talk about the role of the true saint. What does he do? Number two, we're going to talk about his importance and glory. And finally, number three, we're going to talk about how is it benefiting to associate with such a true saint. So let's start again with number one. What role does the Satpurush play? It's obvious. He joins one with God through various methods, and he destroys the desires for the worldly pleasures of the world. This is his role. This is what he does. Meaning, a businessman who sells diamonds, his business is to sell diamonds and to mine diamonds to get the best diamonds and to sell them in the market. In the same way, the role of the great saint is to give someone God and to destroy his worldly pleasures. This is what he does. Number two, his importance and glory. Now, again, Gunathan Swami, in his talks, he says, I have never seen a person attain God without the association of a true saint. This is his importance. This is his glory. This is how important he is, that without him, one will never be able to achieve God. His glory, we can also say, is that in Swaminarayan and in Vachanamrut, Shree Maharaj says that by having the darshan of such a saint is equivalent to having the darshan of God himself. This is the glory. And finally, number three, what are the benefits? Obviously, everyone looks first at what is the benefit of anything you do. If you work, then what is the benefit? Obviously, money. If you study, what is the benefit? So you can graduate and get a good occupation. So there's benefits to everything you do. In the same way, one may think, what is the benefit of associating with such a true saint? Number one, he helps one develop affection for God. One of the most difficult things to do is to develop affection for God. Why? Because we have affection for this world and the worldly materialistic things. We have desires for that stuff. Due to that, it's very difficult to develop affection for God. So he does this for you. This is a benefit. Number two, he pretty much destroys the worldly desires you have. Now, you may think, is this a good thing or a bad thing? But let me tell you, it's a very good thing. Because for, again, millions and millions of lives, we've been roaming around and attaching ourselves to the worldly pleasures, thinking that this is the only true source of happiness. But there is something that's beyond this world, beyond any of these temporary things, which is the bliss of God. And the benefit of association of the true saint is that he helps one destroy the worldly desires. And number 3, finally, he helps one attain a high spiritual level, meaning one can become highly spiritualized, one can have constant rapport, just like how that Satpurush has rapport with God. Such a person also develops such kind of rapport. So these are the benefits of associating with such a true saint. Due to these factors, we should associate with such a saint. And by doing this, one can reach the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal, we can say, of each and every person to attain God. That's why the Ekantik Satpurush is the most essential, beneficial, and important part to, you can say, the spiritual world. Saying this, Jai Swaminarayan. Shripatim Shridharam Sarvadevishwaram Bhaktidharmatmanam Vasudevam Hare Madhavam Kesavam